The idea somehow that I'm going to go on exactly the same way if I have to succeed is complete nonsense, because the two situations are completely different.
So, it's finally happened. After decades of speculation, King Charles has dropped a bombshell that has the entire world talking. At 75 years old, the monarch has finally admitted what many of us suspected for years. But what exactly did he reveal, and why now? Could this be the turning point in the royal family's future? Stay tuned, because today we're diving deep into the truth that has left the world shocked, and trust me, you won't want to miss this. The weight of the crown, Charles's early life and struggles. To put this revelation into its proper perspective, we have to go right back to the very beginning. King Charles III was born to Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip as their eldest son, thrust into a life that few will ever understand. From the moment of his birth, his path was set. He was supposed to be the next King of England, with every step he made shadowed and dissected further for criticism. Yet, beneath all this pomp and circumstance, there was a boy who most often buckled under the giant weight of the crown. As a young boy, Charles was never, well, what one would call a typical royal. Unlike his mother, Queen Elizabeth, often described in public by the words composed and stoic, he showed a sensitive and introspective child, and many close to him observed how he wasn't all that well suited to the rigid expectations of royal life. He preferred quiet contemplation and was known for being introspective and artistic, traits that didn't exactly align with the royal mold. Little wonder he grew up in doubt as to whether he would ever live up to expectation. Let's not forget, Charles grew up during an era when the monarchy was placed under a very unforgiving public gaze, far more than any of his ancestors. Literally, his every step was followed by the press and commented on by the public. The fact that he was sent to the best schools possible, such as Cheam and Gordonstown schools, that boast their stern discipline and hardness, only contributed a little to soothe the damage. On the contrary, some evidence claims that Charles was finding these schools unbearably strict and alienating. He reportedly said that the formative experience was like a prison sentence. Imagine being groomed to be king, feeling utterly foreign to the world you would one day lead. But it wasn't just the press or the public that burdened him. His father, Prince Philip, known to be stern and traditional in his values, reportedly disapproved of Charles's gentle and sensitive nature. While Philip loved sports, adventure, and leadership, Charles loved the arts, particularly painting and philosophy. This created a father-son dynamic that was often strained because Charles felt intense pressure to live up to the image of a robust future king, even when that image clashed with who he truly was. Through these early years, a pattern began to take form. Charles was consistently being torn between two worlds. One was the world of duty and tradition, wherein he was expected to grow into a mold carved out by centuries of royal expectation. The other was his personal world, in which his passions and beliefs often ran at variance with the royal stiff upper lip mentality. This tension between duty and personal identity would follow him throughout his life and would shape not only his public image but also his internal struggles. Yet despite these many difficulties, Charles never wavered from his path. He knew from birth that he was destined for the throne, and a lot of his early adulthood was built up for it. As time went on, however, the price of that seemed to be extracted in some personal ways. For example, Charles clashed with some aspects of the monarchy and how it relates to modern society. He was fully aware of the monarchy's image problem and set about trying to modernize the institution, knowing full well this would create tension inside the royal family. But if there was one thing that set him apart, it was his passion for causes he believed in, especially environmental causes. From a very young age, Charles spoke about environmental conservation at a time when this issue was taboo. Indeed, many observers of the royal family said that was one of the few subjects where the prince showed unequivocal confidence. Whereas the world might have doubted his ability to become king, nobody could question his commitment to preserving the planet. This preoccupation with global issues sometimes made him appear detached from his closer role of being a future king. Unlike Queen Elizabeth, who had always personified the ideal of being above politics and personal opinions, Charles frequently expressed deep convictions on matters as divisive as climate change, architecture, and organic farming. To some, this was refreshing. The future monarch was plugged into the real world. But for others, it was a cause for alarm whether Charles could ever be expected to behave like a neutral British monarch. Of course, as Charles grew older, these trials became even more pronounced in an attempt to balance his public duties with his private beliefs. It would appear that he couldn't turn to any quarter without being hounded by expectations placed on him, both by his family and the public. But of course, all this against a world fixed on his tumultuous personal life, to which we return in the next section. Over the years, Charles became known as the misunderstood royal, currently torn in his identity and his duty within the monarchy. Those close to him would always say that Charles was much more complicated than the media made him out to be. It was something that followed him through year after year and threw a long shadow over his eventual ascent to the throne. So what was this hidden truth that Charles had been struggling with for so long? And why did it take him until the age of 75 to finally come clean? The answers to these questions lie in the very heart of his personal struggles, and they point to a deeper revelation that would shake not just the monarchy, but the entire world. The royal scandals, Charles's troubled personal life. As much as Charles had to deal with responsibilities and expectations placed on him since the earliest age, nothing seemed to intrigue the world's attention quite like his personal life did. You see, the British royal family has built an image of perfection, of grace, and of tradition. Behind those palace walls, though, it was nowhere near a fairy tale that the public imagined. And if there was any one area of his life in which that contrast really did come into view, it had to be with the late Princess Diana. Let's take a ride, if you will, back to the 1980s. The 1981 wedding between Charles and Lady Diana Spencer seemed like the stuff fairy tales are made of. Young and beautiful Diana became an overnight sensation all over the world. The marriage was watched by millions, and briefly, it seemed that finally the future king had found his happily ever after. As we now know, that could not have been farther from the truth. The fissures in their marriage appeared very early on. Charles was already in his 30s when they married, and he had spent much of his adult life in the public eye. Diana, marrying at just 20, felt the pressures of royal life acutely. While she was soon to become the people's princess, worshipped by millions, her relationship with Charles was anything but a fairy tale. And now, for the elephant in the room, Charles's relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. Yes, that Camilla. As the world was still busy groveling over Charles and Diana's marriage, the then handsome young prince had been continuing his romance with Camilla behind the scenes. But then, his connection with her went back years earlier. It is well documented that Charles never stopped having romantic feelings for her. This emotional entanglement led to the biggest scandals in modern royal history. It was only a matter of time before the press latched onto Charles and Camilla's continued affair, and the world was forced to bear witness as the royal marriage played itself out in slow motion. But tabloids weren't the only one interested publicly. Diana had become the tragic heroine of this love triangle. Who could forget her infamous interview, wherein she said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." That one line summed up the emotional turmoil that had been brewing for years underneath the surface. Their divorce in 1996 headlined the paper's unprecedented media frenzy. Charles and Diana had become more than just royals. They were celebrities, and their personal lives were being torn apart by the press day in and day out. The divorce for Charles was one of the lowest points in his life. He failed to live up to the idealized image of royal family life, and even worse, he had to face the harsh reality of public opinion weighing heavily in favor of Diana. Few people believed he would ever recover from the scandal. But the personal troubles for Charles did not end with divorce. Just a year later, in 1997, tragedy struck when Diana died in a car accident in Paris. The world was in mourning over the beloved princess that was taken from them, and the royal family took brutal criticism over the handling of Diana's death. As far as the public was concerned, Charles had finally sunk to an all-time low. Most people held him responsible for the misery that led to Diana's tragic end. His affair with Camilla became even more contentious, for most blamed her for the collapse of his marriage with Diana. The years that followed the death of Diana were really trying times for Charles, as he had to walk the rope between discharging his royal duties and handling the period of relentless public scrutiny at every step that pursued him wherever he went. It seemed, for a very long period of time, as though his reputation was never going to recover. But very slowly over the years, public opinion began to shift. Charles, ever the dutiful royal, continued doing charitable work and his environmental advocacy. In time, his relationship with Camilla gradually became more palatable to the public. But still, many were left without an admission by Charles about what the world had been waiting for. Many wondered if he would ever truly come clean, given that he had kept quiet on his personal failings and the role he played in the royal scandals. It is here that things begin to get really interesting. As Charles approached his 70s, it was evident that his time as king was well at hand. But one question always remained. Would he clear up the royal scandals before he took over the throne? The world wanted closure after those many years of speculative rumors about what had really happened behind closed doors. And now, as we know, at 75, Charles has finally broken his silence. Precisely what did he admit to, and why now? It is relevant that Charles has always been a man deeply connected with tradition, yet at the same time he has shown a disposition to break with the past. And it was now, under this weight of the crown, that he finally decided to come out with secrets that had been haunting him for decades. But it's not his confession alone that is stunning. It is because of the timing, motive, and consequences of the admission that make people talk. But we cannot also turn away from the fact that Camilla is very significant in his life now. What was an affair deemed scandalous has now transformed into a marriage more accepted, with Camilla eventually becoming queen consort. But there was nothing smooth about Charles's path to this day, and his recent confession shows just how complicated and painful his journey has been. So what did Charles reveal? Was it about Diana? Was it about Camilla, or even deeper, touching that part of him that makes him a man, a father, and a king? Well, this is where it takes an even stranger turn. The next revelation is what has really sent the world reeling. And once you hear it, you will understand why this isn't just another royal scandal. It's something much, much bigger. But what if I said that Charles's confession goes far beyond these family relationships? What if the true shock lies in a deeper truth about the royal family's role in modern society, and even their very survival? The Monarchy's Future, a confession that changes everything. Now that Charles has finally come clean about the personal demons that have plagued him for decades, we come to that part of his confession that has really sent shockwaves around the world, the future of the monarchy itself. Whereas for most people it was his tumultuous relationships with Diana and Camilla, something else was more hidden, yet much deeper and more important. And that is what Charles has revealed. But prepare yourselves, because everything which is going to follow from here may change your view on the British monarchy forever. Well, what did Charles say exactly? The shocking part is that Charles has been known his whole life as the environmentist crusader for the royal family, a thinking outside-the-box kind of prince who was often thought to be some sort of rebel. Truly, no one would have guessed that his biggest act of rebellion would be against that to which he has been born and groomed, the monarchy itself. Yes, you heard that right. Charles has finally voiced what many royal insiders have long speculated. He doubts the future of the British monarchy. It's not just about him. It's about the survival of the institution that has reigned over Britain for centuries. And in his confession, he laid out the reasons why the monarchy as we know it may not last. But before those reasons are explained, let's go back in time a bit. The monarchy has always been a symbol of continuity, tradition, and stability. The British royal family has, century after century, been the point of reference at the heart of the nation's identity. In recent years, however, things have slowly begun to change. Public opinion has grown increasingly polarized. To some, they are an anachronism, a hangover from a bygone era, while to others, they are at the heart of British life. What of Charles? The thing is, Charles was one of those modernizers at heart. From his environmental activism to championing such causes as organic farming and sustainable living, he has never been one to shy away from challenging the status quo. But his latest admission takes this to a whole new level. In one shocking turn of events, Charles has made the incredible admission that the monarchy in its present form is out of step with the modern world, and he is not sure it will survive the next generation. Now just think about that for a minute. A man whose entire life has been a preparation for kingship is out and out querying whether the institution he is about to lead has a future. That is not a confession. That is a seismic shift in the way we think about the royal family. And it's left everyone asking, what does this mean for the monarchy? According to sources close to him, Charles has confided in a handful of close friends that he truly believes the monarchy will have to come into the 21st century a lot if it's going to survive. It's not good enough to simply continue with tradition. The royal family will have to move with the times. While Charles has always been an avid supporter of modernization, his latest comments seem to suggest that he thinks the change may well need to be far more radical than anyone anticipated. But what kind of changes are we talking about here? Is Charles suggesting a complete overhaul of the monarchy? Or could he be hinting at something even more drastic? Could it be that Charles is preparing the public for the possibility that the British monarchy, as an institution, may one day come to an end? It's a question that has left royal watchers reeling. And while Charles hasn't provided specific details about what he envisions for the future, one thing is clear. He believes that the monarchy's survival is far from guaranteed, the secret that could change it all. Just when we thought Charles's confession couldn't get more shocking, he drops a bombshell that no one saw coming, a revelation so big it has left even seasoned royal experts speechless. For it so happens there has been a secret one kept so efficiently hidden from public view for decades, until Charles decided it was time to bring it to light. But what could this secret be? And why has it been kept under wraps for so long? Well, this is where things get really interesting. Charles has insinuated there's a truth concerning the royal family that the public has never known, something that, if revealed, could change the way we see the monarchy forever. But what is it? Well, let's just say the answer is a good deal more complicated than you might think. You see, the British royal family has always remained mysterious. From their personal lives to the inner details of the palace, there's a lot that has remained undercover. However, Charles's recent confession gives the inkling that beneath this lies something even graver, which may shake the pillars of the royal family. According to sources close to Charles, this secret somehow relates to the monarchy's relevance in the modern world. For years, there have been whispers that the royal family is struggling to stay relevant, that behind the scenes, they're struggling to work out how to fit into a rapidly changing society. And now it seems, Charles has confirmed those suspicions. But it's not just about relevance, it's about survival. The suggestion of Charles is that the monarchy may well be nowhere near as resilient as we have been led to believe. There are even suggestions that behind closed doors, this is a royal family which has been conducting its own quiet battle for some time over its place in British society. As public opinion becomes increasingly polarized, the likely result is the most defining moment for the monarchy. But what's surprising is that Charles has let slip there's a plan, a contingency, in case its future is ever called into question. And the revelation has left royal watchers scurrying to decipher what he means. Or might the royals be considering a scenario in which the monarchy is no longer considered part and parcel of British life? Or is something even more sensational afoot? One such theory that's gaining more popularity is that Charles is gearing up for a rather radical change in the way the monarchy functions. Some think he's planning to introduce a slimmed-down, modern version of the royal family, one better adapted to the 21st century. That could mean fewer working royals, less public funding, and a more transparent approach to life in the palace. But then there's the really dramatic alternative. Could it be that Charles is preparing the public for the eventual abolition of the monarchy altogether? It's a shocking thought, but one that can't be ignored. Of course, Charles himself has let slip that the monarchy's survival isn't necessarily guaranteed. And with a newer, more skeptical generation for the institution, perhaps the royals are bracing for a future in which they may not figure at all in British society. So what does this mean for the future of the monarchy? Well, that's the million-dollar question. Charles's confession has opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. And the truth is, no one knows for sure what the future holds, but one thing is certain: things will never be the same again. As the royal family faces a new era of transparency and change, we'll be watching closely to see what unfolds next. If you want to stay updated on all the latest royal news and insights, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious.